Assumption or attraction, or do I believe in mixed? Just wondering. I believe it's all the same, but I came to understand it after years of trying to understand the law of attraction. I came to understand it via the law of assumption. So I can now listen to law of attraction teachings that used to sound like gibberish to me, and understand them, but I teach law of assumption. So I teach like an integrative law of assumption. I learned the hard way that like the thoughts part, yes, the thoughts are the seed, but if you're solely focusing on the thoughts, can you still get what you want? Yes, but in my opinion, it's working harder, not smarter. So I've got, these cheat codes that I've implemented in my life that make it just so much less anxiety ridden and stressful. And, initially when I learned law of assumption, I was like, oh, cool, it's my thoughts that manifest. That's easier to understand and easier to kind of control than being in the feeling of having the thing, right? So it is your thoughts and subconscious beliefs that manifest. But there are functions of feelings where you can utilize your feelings and things like that to make the process easier. So yeah, I kind of have added that to my teachings just because the thoughts definitely worked alone to make me feel better in general, but eventually that only took me so far, and I ended up actually getting really anxious again, but like so gradually that I didn't realize until I got burnt out, and then was forced to take a break from certain things, and was like, oh, it was like certain things and people and things like that were triggering me, where my mind was sending the signal to my body, like, don't go there, that's not part of your manifestation, even though it seems like the logical link to it. And I got burnt out and had to take a break from it, and was like, oh, I feel relief. And then all of my manifestations started flowing again. I was like, for fuck's sake. All these people saying just focus on your thoughts. Like, yes, the thoughts manifest, but it's not the whole picture. And can you affirm through anxiety? Yes, you can. But a lot of people will give up before they get the thing they want because they'll get burnt out. So let's avoid that. That's what I'm all about. Like, let's do things the smart way, not the hard way. Avoid the burnout. Do I look stoned because the sun's in my eyes and I can't open my eyes properly? Neville or Florence Scotian or Abraham. In terms of what? Sorry? So I teach integrative law of assumption, which is Neville. But I don't just talk about the thoughts. I talk about the cheat codes that make the thoughts easier to stay on top of and opposing thoughts easier to kind of avoid. Not avoid, like you'll always have them to some degree, but they'll happen a lot less if you're doing the things that I teach. Hey Pri, how's it going? Thanks for the hearts, guys. The more people who join, the more questions I can answer, the more I can help all of you, first or second hand. There's always something that I say in answering someone else's question that can benefit you. And I want to say as well, like, oh, thank you. People jump on here all the time. They're like, what have you actually manifested? So why don't I just go into that? I've manifested my apartment, my job, a pay rise in my job, a lesser rental increase recently. So my rent went up, which is done like everywhere in the world, right? But like in Australia, people have been allowed to hike their rents up like ridiculously. And because I have a story that my landlord's a cool dude, like despite the fact that when I told my mum my rent was going up, she was like, Mum believes in this stuff, but she doesn't sort of like listen to it the way I teach it. She just has more of a like kind of spiritual approach to it. So she still kind of, watches the news and listens to a lot of the scaremongering shit. And I'm like, I don't want to hear it. But she's like telling me all the shit on the news. I'm like, Mum, I told you I don't watch the news for a reason. So she was like, I told her about my rent, and I was like, I'm going to ask my real estate, to ask my landlord if there's like wiggle room. Can we like I understand that it's a stream of income for him, but can we do something about it? And she's like, there's no point in doing that. The real estate agents are telling them that they can do it and they're encouraging it and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I'm still going to ask. Like, I'm unattached to the outcome. I'm still going to ask, and I'm also going to ask my boss for a pay rise. And this is where you can take you can knowingly take inspired action as long as you're unattached to the result, right? Because like either way, I was like, I'm going to be able to cover my rent increase. It's not going to be an issue. But I'm also just going to ask the real estate agent to ask the landlord, which the landlord actually said, yeah, cool, I can do this instead. How about that? And basically, I can't remember how much less the rental increase ended up being, but it was significant because initially, like, the amount that they wanted to put up was ridiculous. And then my boss gave me a pay rise, and I was expecting like 1 to 3% because that's generally what you would get in a pay rise in Australia. I got 10%, a 10% fucking pay rise. So now, in terms of my part-time job, which isn't the only, like, obviously I have a business, right? But for me, I'm going to put less pressure on building my business, having the job that covers all my necessities, right? That's why I have my part-time job. Because the less pressure, the less action being taken from fear, the less opportunity for the opposing thoughts to come up. Like, it's okay to have a job when you're manifesting a successful business and blah, blah, blah. So now I have more money left over at the end of like paying for all my necessities than before my rent went up. What else? Friendships, romantic, obviously. I just try not to talk about that stuff as much because I'm not going to go into the details of my personal life when it comes to talking about people who may not want to be mentioned on a public forum, which is fair. But also because I know a lot of you are here for love, and focusing solely on that is often going to make the process longer. So I try not, that you'll notice with a lot of my content, I try to keep it very general, or I give lots of different examples, because there's a lot of people just talking about love who haven't even manifested love themselves, which is why they're obsessively talking about it. Also, it gets them more views and followers. So may as well give you guys, some of you will already know the story because I've given a rundown before, but my introduction to conscious manifestation. So, sorry guys, I forgot to bring a tissue and I've put my sunscreen too close to my eyes, and when my eyes water, my nose runs. So my first introduction to conscious manifestation was when I was turning 21. So I used to consider myself quite a spiritual person, was really into star signs and things like that. Now looking back, I can see how a lot of the things under the spiritual umbrella, while a lot of it I believe now, like looking back, is teaching conscious manifestation, it's just, there's a lot of misinterpretation and a lot of crutches for people that actually end up pushing away what they want, like checking metaphysical tools and asking psychics questions, and all of that is projecting out that you don't have what you want, otherwise you wouldn't need to ask, right? So I was looking for answers, meaning of life, how to be happy, blah, blah, blah. And when I was turning 21, a friend of a friend who was studying like graphic design and wanted practice offered to do my, what did he offer? No, maybe I asked him. I think we spoke about what he was doing, and I was like, oh, maybe you could do my, oh fuck, this is a long time ago, I'm 37 now. Anyway, he ended up doing my invitations for my 21st birthday, and he totally didn't have to get me a gift because he was already doing something for me for free, and was a friend of a friend, you know. But he bought me a copy of The Secret, and that was when the seed was planted, but I didn't get it. I left the book back in New Zealand when I moved over here when I was about 22, I think. But I loved the idea of it, and I looked into it sporadically over the years. But like, it always just seemed too hard. It always just seemed like if you weren't doing all the things and you weren't feeling positive all the time, you couldn't have what you wanted. And I didn't really know how to create more positive experiences in my life coming from a negative mindset, because I didn't really know a lot about mindset at the time. It kind of felt like the universe, like I actually remember saying to a friend once, like, do you ever feel like the universe is just pointing and laughing at you? Like, I was a very negative person who called myself a realist. I was very glass half empty. And so, yeah, I just kept putting it into the too hard basket. But as we know, if you know anything about law of assumption, you're always manifesting. So putting it in the too hard basket is actually just manifesting off the autopilot of your previous programming, which you can reprogram. So over a decade of sporadically looking into it, putting it in the too hard basket, refusing to give up and being like, no, like if this is a thing and I can live the life I want and choose it, like I want to fucking understand it. And eventually I stumbled across a modern interpretation of the law of assumption, and it all clicked. So initially I kind of put it into practice for a few months and could see that it was working in various areas of my life. So I started my podcast before I started coaching people, because I wanted to get more practice before I started charging, which is, not something a lot of coaches do. A lot of people just start teaching. They're like, come across it. They're like, oh, I like the sound of this. It means I can manifest the person I want, because most of them are just talking about manifesting love. And they get on here and manically talk about like, all you have to do is think about it, guys, and you can have the person you want. I'm doing it too. And it's like, fucking hell. So I wanted practical experience in various areas of my life before I started even teaching it properly and charging for it. And then eventually the mindset stuff only took me so far. It made me feel really good initially. I had a lot of wins. But then I hit a wall. And so I also have integrated into my teachings what got me through that, and what also has made the process easier and things flow more easily and all of that. All right, cool.